Um, a very good morning to everyone, and sorry about the delayed start of the session. We welcome all the panelists and participants to the session. Our session today is about the GCF-funded project in Egypt, enhancing climate change and adaptation in the north coast and Nile Delta regions in Egypt. We are going to give a progress update on the project today. The agenda of the session will start with opening speeches from Ragab Al-Aziz, the Deputy Minister of Resources and Irrigation. Then I will have the honor to give a progress update on the project. Then Engineer Mohammed Ghattas and Dr. Mohammed Bayoumi will give the perspective of Shore Protection Authority and the UNDP on the project. Then we'll have a question and comments session, and at the end we'll have the closing speeches. So now I pass on the microphone to Dr. Ragab, who will give the opening speeches of the session. Please, Dr. Ragab.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. I think what we need is to mute all and accept the speaker so as to avoid any echo. Okay. Yes, are you hearing me?
Yes, Dr. Ragab, please go ahead.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, dear participants. I'd like to welcome you all in this important session on climate change or GCF progress or the project progress. As you know, all this is very important project. So if there is a problem in the sound, you can tell me if. Okay.
No, Dr. Ragab, we can hear you. Please carry on, please.
So as you know, all Egypt is very vulnerable to climate changes. As you know, climate changes include increase in temperature, change in rainfall pattern, sea level rise, salt intrusion, and a higher probability of extreme weather events such as high intensity rainfall, include floods, drought, and these issues are recognized really in Egypt. The negative effect of these changes are likely to be felt more strongly in the near future, and therefore we have to work hard from now on to mitigate these effects. According to a report by the World Bank, Egypt is among countries predicted to be most affected by climate change due to their long coastlines, the high concentration of population and economic activities in coastal areas, and a heavy reliance on agriculture and the natural resources in these areas. Nile Delta is the largest area to suffer from severe impacts of climate change due to their low elevation, high population density, and the high dependency of local settlers on agriculture and also aquaculture. In the beginning of 1980s, as you know, Egypt established the Shore Protection Authority and Shore Protection Research Institute to take care of protection of canal network and to protect canal network and Nile branches connected to the sea. The mandate was more developed to consider climate changes in shore protection. Egypt, through the authority, invested heavily to implement proactive measures on climate changes. In 2018, a grant from GCF have been signed to enhance the resilience of local communities in the northern coast and the Nile Delta in Egypt through integrated coastal management and scaling up the use of soft engineering solutions and ecosystem-based adaptation measures. The project will conduct soft protection of about 69 kilometers in most critical coastal areas, in addition to developing integrated coastal zone management plan. The project is implementing well. Most of the 69 kilometers have been determined, and the authority, the Shore Protection Authority, is working in these areas. I think Port Said, Qahliya, Damiet, Kafr al-Sheikh. So what I can say is that the project is progressing well. As far as I know, I think the company that is going to implement the ICZM have been appointed and is going to start soon. So I think this is also good progress for the project. What I'd like to say also, we have to concentrate on training. So training is an important component to ministry staff and also stakeholders staff to understand and deal with climate changes adaptation. As you know, this is an important subject related also to the water security and SDGs, and I think the government of Egypt has recognized this very well and started to work hard and invest heavily in that area. So I don't want to take much time, but I wish you all to have successful session full of fruitful discussions that help Egypt to mitigate the climate changes. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Ragab, for your speech. We now move to Engineer Midhat Hanna, the head of the Shore Protection Authority. Dr. Midhat, please.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad. Dear participants and participants, it's my pleasure to welcome you to session. The project that is funded by the government of Egypt, the Green Climate Fund, and United Nations Development Program to help Egypt adapt to the climate change impact in this coastal zone. As you already know, climate change has become to fact in our life nowadays. Its impacts such as reduction of water resources, flooding of lowland in coastal zones, and decline in agriculture productivity are felt in the various aspects of our daily activities. Therefore, there is an urgent need to mitigate it and adapt to those impacts. This session focuses on verification of project effort to adapt to climate change in Egypt and globally to share knowledge, lessons learned, and also success stories that can be replicated in other parts of the world. I wish you all a successful and international session. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Engineer Midhat. Now we move into our presentations. I am honored and I have the pleasure to present the first one, an overview of the project, and I will give an update of the progress made in 2020. So now I will share my screen. So today, my name is Muhammad Ahmed, the Executive Project Manager of the project. Probably some of you don't know the What is the project? Enhancing climate change adaptation in the North Coast and Delta regions in Egypt. What I will do now, I will share a video that gives some information on the project. So if you bear with me a moment. So I hope that the video is running smoothly. So this was a brief video showing the details of the project. I'm now back to the presentation. So the project in brief, it's actually a good collaborative work that we did between the Ministry of Water Resources, Ministry of Environment, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the UNDP. The preparation for this project started 2015. And it actually started by the end of 2018. We hope that the project activities will continue after it is completed in 2024. The project is funded by the government of Egypt, the Green Climate Fund, and the UNDP. And as presented in the video, we would like to protect people and infrastructure in the Nile Delta from sea level rise and extreme weather events, and also develop an integrated coastal zone management plan for the whole north coast of Egypt, which is about 1,000 kilometers. So where are we at the moment? The progress update. Component 1, which is the protection of people and infrastructure. We have 5 vulnerable hotspots in the Delta, starting from the west, Rosetta, then Kafr el-Sheikh, and then Daqahliya, Damiatta, and Port Said. And Kafr el-Sheikh governorate, the project is going to protect 27 kilometers. Those 27 kilometers will be covered by 4 projects. So phase 1 started 7 kilometers, protecting 7 kilometers, and the project is due to complete it in 2020. So by this year, in November 2020, we will finalize the protection of those 7 kilometers. Phase 2 also started and will be completed in November 2020. Phase 3 and 4 will cover the remaining length, which is about 13 kilometers, and is due to be completed in 2021. So in Kafr el-Sheikh, we protected 14 kilometers now, and we are going in 2021 to complete the remaining length of 27 kilometers. That will protect the whole low land area in Kafr el-Sheikh. Now we move to Port Said. In Port Said, we will protect 12 kilometers. Phase 1 already started and will be completed next year in October 2021. And phase 2 will start soon and will be due to be completed in early 2022. In Damiatta, the work will start soon this year. It's been advertised and will be assigned to a contractor. And again, it's also due to be completed in early 2022. In Daqahliya, phase 1 started and will be due to finish in 2021, and phase 2 will start soon. So the 2 phases will be completed in early 2022. Rosetta, we are still tendering this, and it's probably will be completed by mid 2022. So in brief, all the projects will be completed by mid-2022. By mid-2022, we will be protecting 69 kilometers of vulnerable hotspots in the Delta using nature-based solutions. And I will give an example of this, one of the nature-based solutions that are used in Kafr el-Sheikh. It's built from a clay core. This core material comes from the Lake Borollos, and then it's covered by sand. And this sand is then covered by sand fences to fix the sand and increase the height of the structure. These are the steps to build the structure. So this photo shows the excavation work. This is the layout of the geotextiles before construction of the clay core. And this photo shows the construction of the clay core and then compaction of the core to make sure it's solid enough. And then the construction of the sand outer layer, and then compaction of the sand outer layer, and then this is the structure. We then add the sand fences on the top of that. I will show you the final picture, which we expect to see in a few years. These pictures are based on a pilot project that was done 3-4 years ago. So as you can see, the fences disappear, and we end up with a very beautiful sand dune built within this structure. So it protects and also gives a beautiful view to the location. We don't only look at protection, we also look at the community that's protected by the protections. And within the project, we also do community development. The community development is done based on consultation with the people who live there, and also an assessment study that we did. And we aim to create more jobs for people there, long-term jobs, not short-term jobs, improve the livelihood of the people, also build their capacities to increase their wages, and also raise the awareness about climate change and its impacts. We move now to component 2, which is a very, very important component, and we aim to develop an integrated coastal zone management plan for the whole north coast of Egypt, which is about 1,000 kilometers. I think this is the first time in Egypt that we will cover the whole length of the north coast in one study. What we aim to do is actually to move from this picture where people in the land and people who work to protect the land, and people who work in the sea, work in different boxes. We would like to move from this picture into this picture. We will all work together in an integrated manner. This integrated coastal zone management plan will be also supported by a national coastal observation system to support decision makers. We will have type gauges and wave measurements. These are a couple of photos showing the equipment that will be used to build the national coastal observation system, which will help in decision making and also for early warning. As Dr. Ragab mentioned, capacity building is an important aspect of this project. So we focus on building the capacities of the staff in different ministries that deal with a coastal zone. We're also going to build an early warning system based on our observation system, and we look at the institutional framework and the regulatory framework to improve the way the coastal zone is managed. So what we did, we started a capacity building program in 2019 for the staff in the coastal governorates. This will be completed tomorrow within the Cairo Water Week. We have given a number of lectures to the staff in the coastal governorates to raise their knowledge about the ICZM, its challenges, opportunities, its different aspects like the governance, the environment, the water, the protection, the agriculture, the tourism, all aspects around the integrated coastal zone management. We also successfully finished a tender to hire a competent consultant to develop the plan, and the contract will be signed within this month or early next month, and we are hopeful that we will start early in 2021 to developing the actual plan. Just to give you a number of future steps that we're going to follow. As I said, by 2022, we're going to protect a number of highly vulnerable hotspots in the Nile Delta. We are hopeful that we will develop the full ICZM plan for the whole north coast of Egypt in 2023, and we'll continue the capacity building program. This is in a nutshell the update on the project, and I am hopeful that this gives you an update of what we did so far, and we will continue giving you an updates as the time goes. Now I finish my presentation, and I will stop sharing my presentation. And now we move into Engineer Mohammed Hassan, his presentation, which is about soft protection and evaluation of its performance for coastal protection. So now Engineer Mohammed is with you.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Engineer Mohammed Hassan, head of the sector of research and studies. I'll start to give you some knowledge about the project of building with nature. We call it building with nature, and sometimes we call it soft structure. Before we start the beginning of for this presentation, I find it's very important to give you some knowledge about Egypt and how the coast Egypt is very important, and what is the aspects of all activities along the coast is important. First of all, we know the strategic location of Egypt, and the area of Egypt is about 1 million square kilometer, and although this area is a very big area, but we live in 5% of this area, and this area is subject to climate change and sea level rise. Suez Canal passes 7.5% of the world sea trade. We have 11 governorates lies along the Mediterranean coast. If we go through some activities along the Mediterranean coast, we find 50% of the population lives in the coastal area, 60% of fish catch lying in 3 main delta lagoons, 85% of oil lying through this area. We have also some activities along the tourist developments. We have main coastal challenges facing coastal zone. First of all, the coastal erosion. We start facing it from the first 19th through the last decade. The physical parameter, which meaning with coastal erosion, waves, currents, and sediments. We have also lowland areas and are subject to flooding. Delta subsidence, and it's very important thing, especially we have now we speed up with gas extraction. Climate change and sea level rise, which scientists find it decrease with time, and we go through this briefly through these parameters which we involve in the design of any project. We're dealing with now some aspects of storms and extreme events happening in Egypt, like in Alexandria in 2010. The waves in this time exceed 7.6 meter. Actually, Ras El Bar in Damietta Also Gamasa 2013, some of the deltas like Alexandria, Beira 2015, Alexandria 2015, and the flooding of the lowland areas. First, we start with dealing with coastal erosion. We find coastal erosion exceeded 4.8 kilometers along the coast and 2.8 kilometers along the Damietta coast. And this is a very big retreat of shorelines and threaten people, threaten their activities, economy. So we start protecting this area by building hard structures, which we will go through it and explain the difference between hard structures and soft structures. So the sea liberalized IPCC Assessment Report 5, which issued 2014, show that the model RCB 8.5, we are going to civilize approximately going to 98 centimeter. And it's a very big challenge to deal with this, and we have to do this with some projects, but with low costs. Nile Delta subsidence also is a very big challenge, and the Nile Delta subsidence and with sea level rise equal gives a summation of the sea level rise along the delta coast, which exceeded in 2,100 about 1 meter. There's some scenarios of the delta without any intervention and protecting works for the delta, which shows the area subject to flooding in scenario sea level rise 1.5 meters, sea level rise 1 meter. Nile Delta lowland areas, we find about 2/3 of the Nile Delta will subject to flooding because it's a very lowland area in the Delta. The Delta is one of the 4 hotspots along the world, which is subject to threatened by flooding according to sea level rise. Vulnerability to sea level rise. Now I will show you some of the government rates which subject to sea level rise and flooding. This is the delta. This is the most area subject to flooding with red color. Now we're moving to Alexandria. This is Alexandria. This is a sketch of elevations of the area from the eastern harbor to Stanley area. We find the area which the level below 3 meters and subject to flooding is at risk. Now we're moving to the ISSM plan, which we made before with the JIP project, and we divide the coastal area to 14 zone to 14 zone and study each zone, which is priority. We find from this study the lowland area and the expected area which is going to be lowland if we're going through the model RCB 8.5 and it's subject to flooding. In this project we consider the most vulnerable areas, the hotspot areas, is about 5 hotspot areas, 69 kilometers of 5 vulnerable hotspots within the Nile Delta, in Bahira and Kafr Sheikh, Taqaliya, Port Said. Now I will give you some knowledge about the differences between soft and hard structures and why the Shore Protection Authority moved to protecting the areas with soft structures. Hard engineering, it's a coastal management technique used to protect coast by absorbing the energy of waves, preventing erosion and flooding. It's visible man-made structures used to stop or disturb natural. These structures very expensive. Its solution, and maybe it gave a negative impact on the environment. Installing of these structures in one location can have impact on other location down the coast. Soft structures, it differs from hard structures. It works with nature to protect the coast, rather than trying. They're not trying to stop natural processes. It uses ecological principles and practices, therefore making less of negative impacts on the natural environment. It's less expensive to implement and retain and creates more long sustainable solutions than hard engineering aspects. Here I will give you some examples of the hard structures from seawall and revetments, breakwaters, groin. Seawalls and revetments constructed from concrete stones along the shoreline of the beach. But its advantage is protected from erosion and it's barrier to flooding. The disadvantage is the waves are still powerful and can break down and erode the sea, and it's very expensive to implement and maintain. Breakwaters also built parallel to the beach. It's preventable drift and allow beaches to build up, and the area built is according to the type of breakwater and the goals of the design of the breakwater. The disadvantage is of these breakwaters, it creates erosion further down the coast. It makes hazard to the swimmer, break currents. Also, it's very expensive to protect by the breakwater. Groin also builds, but groins built at the right angles of to the shoreline, preventing shoreline, and allow beaches to build. It's also create erosion further down the coast. The cost it's expensive, and the cost is unattractive view for the users of the beaches. Some of soft structures, Shore Protection Authority start protecting the area with it, starting from beach nourishment. Beach nourishment, it's widening the beach by increasing sand. Sand is coming from artificial quarries, or it's coming from the offshore by dredgers. But till now we start by sand from outside, from artificial quarries. Its advantage is increase the distance the wave has to travel, so slow down the power of the waves and preventing erosion, but it requires a lot of maintenance and it can be costly with the time. During regeneration, we start the project of adaptation of Delta to go through this type of projects. It creates maybe one of these dunes regeneration is creating new dunes or restoring the existing dunes. Dunes act as barriers and absorb wave energy, reducing erosion and protecting against flooding. And it characterized by its low cost. Disadvantage of the dune regeneration is the reduction of pitch width below the limit of dune accretion, because due to the shoreline retreat. Due to dune growth, maintenance is required from time to time to fix the dune. Dikes also, it's built parallel to the beaches, act as a barrier and protecting against erosion and flooding. It's also one of its advantages, low cost, but maintenance from time to time is required. Now we're going to our project with GCF and UNDP, which building with nature and building natural barriers to protect 69 kilometers along the Nile Delta. I think we go through this before. As we said, one of project building softer structures is sandy dunes, and the sandy dunes coming from alien sand transport from storm surge, and it deposited along the sand dunes. Its advantage is low cost and its limited impact on natural dynamics, easy to adapt it to sea level rise. But its issue, it needs some maintenance because the sand of the dunes is coming from the reduction of pitch width, and it needs some maintenance from time to time. This is one of the sandy dunes built by SPA and the GCF project. It consists of sand fences. Sand fences catch the sands, and after filling the area between the sand fences, another uproot of sand fences shakes it, and it collect more sand. And if we want to going up and building the dunes, we can expand our the rear side or the full side along the shoreline. This is some pictures illustrate our work. Now this sand dune is completed for the first two rows, and we are going to raising the sand dunes and fixing the rows above of the sand dunes, and maybe we going and making extension to the sand dunes along the rear side of the project. This is some types of soft structures we're working with. We're working with not only one type of soft structures, because It differs from place to another. We choose soft structure which is suitable for each area. This sand, this dikes or sand dunes, its main material, it's from dredged fill material, which comes from dredging material from Albrollos. So the project is very low cost, and some sand fences from natural weeds. So the project is very protective and very the cost is very low. This is some photos about how the project is built, from excavation, placing of style material, filling of material coming from Albrollos, which most of its particle is clay particles, compacting and fixing weeds. Another type of dikes we work with is the same type of material, but we replace the first line of the dike which facing the sea, because this area is subject to flooding frequently from time to time, and maybe subject to erosion because sea level goes storms. So we start building some storm protection along the seaside area of the dike, and put one sand fences to raising up the bed in front of this dike to prevent run-up of the waves. Other type of sand of dikes, like the dikes we built in Mansoura, it's Mansoura and the New Damirta, it's only too suitable to build, raising the bed level to level plus 2 for the dike, which is about 50 meters. It's more suitable from perspective view of SBA. I finished my presentation, so thank you.
Thanks so much, Engineer Mohammed Hassan, for a very interesting presentation. Now we stop sharing and we move into Dr. Mohammed Bayoumi's presentation. Please, Dr. Mohammed.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for the introduction. If you allow me to share my screen. My name is Mohammed Bayoumi. I'm working at the Environment and Climate Change Team Leader for the UNDP Egypt. And my presentation is going to cover the UNDP climate change adaptation activities, initiatives in general, and how this applies for the case of Egypt as a partner in the GCF project with the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation. As you have seen in the previous presentation by by Engineer Mohammed Hassan, Egypt is suffering from extreme weather events that are increasing in frequency and strength and causing actually lots of casualties and fatalities. And in this respect, I prefer to start sharing my presentation with some of the facts that we have on the ground, initiated by UNEP, United Nations Environment Programme. showing that the global average temperature in 2019 was 1.1 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial period. And actually, the last 10 years were the highest on record in terms of average temperature. And it was an exceptional global heat decade that led to retaining ice in the two poles, as well as in the mountains, the glaciers. Obviously, this amount of water was seeped into the sea, increasing the sea levels. We know that the sea has been increasing over the last century by 20 centimeters, in a way like 2 millimeters per year. But over the last 2 decades, this rate is increasing, and now it is more than 3 millimeters per year. Obviously, the increase in temperature has caused imbalances to biodiversity. We see vectors for diseases are increasing, like mosquitoes, and some scientists are attributing the COVID-19 pandemic crisis to biological biodiversity imbalances created by climate change. In the meanwhile, the greenhouse gas emissions are still increasing, and they didn't reach the peak so far. It's not clear when they are going to reach the peak. It's expected that they were going to reach 56 gigaton of carbon dioxide equivalent of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, while the Earth should be generating around only 28 gigaton of carbon dioxide equivalent during this century, if we are to avoid the 2 degrees Celsius increase. Seems that there is a slow response in the presentation. I'll try to switch off the video. Sorry, the control room, I'm losing control on the presentation, actually, if you can help.
Dr. Muhammad, can you stop sharing and reshare?
Yes, the colleagues in the control room are sharing from the control room. Okay, next please. Next. Yes. So, next, please. Previous ones. Previous one, please. Previous. Previous one. Stop. Next, please. Yes, the UNDP is responding actually through climate change adaptation initiatives around the world in developing countries, and there are 6 pillars for the UNDP interventions, starting with the supporting the integrated climate change strategies. There has to be an overarching policies and frameworks and strategies that govern the climate change interventions in developed and developing countries. The UNDP is also supporting the cross-sectoral climate change resilience. We know that the poor are the ones who are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, and those who are related, their work is related to natural resources. And in this respect, there has to be some support for the livelihood and diversification of their economic activities in order to ensure not to lose their income because of climate change. The third pillar is the use of ecosystem-based adaptation, using the natural ecosystems, how they can be used to support the climate change adaptation. The fourth pillar is fostering resilience for food security, and there is an important global objective not to have global food shortage. It means the global food security, is an important issue for the whole world, noting that agriculture is one of the main sectors affected by climate change, and obviously this is going to reduce the agricultural yield. And if this is happening simultaneously in many places of the world, there could be global food shortage. The fifth pillar is the integrated coastal zone management and integrated water resource management as an important tools for managing the natural resources in face of the climate change. And the last pillar is promoting climate change resilience and basic services and adapting the existing infrastructure to a new infrastructure that can cope with the extreme weather events and climate phenomena and climate shocks that are not traditional. Next, please. The objectives of the UNDP through its climate change adaptation initiatives is four elements, actually. The first one is to have farmers gain access to new technologies in order to maintain their livelihoods or improve their livelihoods. As we mentioned, that farmers everywhere in the world are going to be the ones who are going to face in the first line facing the climate change impacts. Overall, the communities are strengthened to be able to absorb the climate shocks like floods, droughts, and pests in different places in the world. And this has to be joined with the improvement of disaster management systems. And we mean by disaster management system the whole bunch of activities starting from assessments of the risks, moving to the development of disaster risk reduction plans and implementation of these plans in a smart way that as long as we cannot avoid the extreme weather events, but we can minimize the economic and fatalities impact of this extreme weather events. Women are an important element in the climate change adaptation portfolio for the UNDP, as they are more vulnerable than men to climate change impacts, and there has to be gender-sensitive approaches to adaptation initiatives. Finally, as I mentioned, the strategies and policies are quite important element in facing climate change, and this has to be developed through dialogues and capacity building of individuals and institutions through the ongoing initiatives. Next, please. The work on climate change in Egypt is governed by the formal documents that Egypt presents to the Secretariat of the UNFCCC, starting with the national communication reports, which were developed through UNDP JEF support in Egypt. Egypt has submitted so far 3 national communication reports. The national communication reports deal with the greenhouse gas emission coming out of Egypt, and it also assesses the most vulnerable sectors to climate change and suggests the adaptation measures. And in addition to the national communication report, Egypt has submitted the INDC report in 2015 as part of the commitment to the Paris Agreement, as well as the BOR, the first BOR report, which was submitted last year. And these 2 last reports also includes big sections on adaptation, which emphasizes the importance of adaptation aspects to climate change in the Egypt. Next, please. With the Ministry of Environment, the UNDP has taken the national communication reports to a step forward to develop a study on the potential economic impacts of climate change in Egypt. In case there is no adaptation measures has been taken, we can assess that the agricultural production to drop by between 8 to 47% by 2060, and obviously this has an implications on the loss of jobs in the agriculture sector. Obviously, the property facing the sea will have a reduced value due to the sea level rise threats. It's expected to have a decrease in the annual revenues from tourism, and overall the gross domestic product, the GDP, is expected to drop between 2 to 6% if there is no climate change adaptation actions taken place. Next, please. Overall, the UNDP is working on climate change adaptation in almost 100 countries, with a portfolio between existing projects and under development that exceeds $2 billion. As you can see, Egypt has benefited from previous UNDP collaboration in the first phase of this project that we are working on, where the soft engineering solutions were tested, as discussed by the two previous presentations. And now we're moving to the full-fledged upscaling of the tested systems in the GCF-funded project. The main sources of funds for the projects that are implemented by UNDP globally are what we call vertical funds, which are UN-affiliated trust funds like the Adaptation Fund, the GF, and now we're working with the GCF. Next, please. An important element of the support the UNDP is providing to developing countries is the development of the climate change national adaptation plans, which we call the NAP. As I mentioned, this is going to be the overall framework for the investment in the area of climate change in the different countries, either from national resources or international agencies, as well as private sector. UNDP is working with 75 countries in this respect. We are finalizing the proposal now with the Ministry of Environment for the development of the NAP for Egypt. We will start hopefully with the beginning of next year. And obviously the work that's being done under the GCF project on the Integrated Coastal Zone Management Plan will be integrated into this NAP, so we can have an investment plan for Egypt for the next 10-15 years for the climate change activities on the national level. Next, please. Integrated climate change strategies. This is another. This was one of the main pillars that the UNDP is working in, and you can see that Egypt benefits from this type of support. The integrated strategies links climate change adaptation with mitigation. As we have seen, the main source of climate change impact comes from the greenhouse gas emissions, and through the integrated strategies, we want to mix mitigation with adaptation in order to maximize the benefit, reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, which is an obligation and important for developed and developing countries to work on this aspect if you want to avoid the 2 degrees Celsius increase in the global temperature, as well as adaptation measures taking place as well. In Egypt, we implemented a joint program that was led by the UNDP and included 6 UN agencies, and it really shaped the work of the different specialized sister UN agencies with the relevant ministries like FAO and IFAD working with the Ministry of Agriculture on climate change adaptation in the agriculture sector, and so on and so forth. Next, please. Next, please. The other pillar, as I mentioned, is supporting the livelihoods of the most vulnerable people affected by climate change. Unfortunately, we don't have dedicated activities for this specific pillar in Egypt. But as Dr. Mohammed has mentioned, we are trying to develop community development activities under the existing GCF project. Next, please. You will see that UNDP is working in this area in supporting micro, small, medium enterprises with a focus on youth and women, and related in the first place to agriculture and fisheries business, which are the ones who are expected to be affected most by climate change, as well as supporting basic infrastructure for houses, roads, and water supply and sanitation. And as I mentioned, in the existing GCF project, we're trying to start some limited activities that we hope that can grow in the future. Next, please. Food security, as I mentioned earlier, is an important issue that climate change does not lead to global food shortage. UNDP is not active in this area in Egypt. There are other UN sister organizations taking care of this activity in Egypt. Next, please. This includes smart agriculture, sustainable land management, watershed management, creation of resilient communities working in these areas. But as I mentioned, it's not an area of expertise in Egypt for the UNDP. Next, please. The ecosystem-based adaptation, how we can use the natural ecosystems as part of the adaptation, climate change adaptation on the national level. The UNDP was privileged actually that worked with the Ministry of Environment in establishing the natural wetlands in the Lake Brolus and Zerani, which is part of the Bardowil Lake, to convert them into protected areas and development of these protected areas with the management plan and the infrastructure. This was 10 years ago, and we can assume today, with the development of the integrated coastal zone management for the north coast of Egypt, as explained in the two previous presentations, that this natural ecosystem is going to be part of the defense system against coastal flooding and sea level rise. Next, please. This is going to be done through ecosystem restoration management plan for this natural wetlands in order to be able to absorb part of the coastal flooding and sea level rise. Next, please. Integrated water resource management planning and integrated coastal zone management planning are very important tools that the UNDP is promoting in order to cope with the expected sea level rise and climate change impacts coming from the sea and on the water resources. As we explained in the previous two presentations, in Egypt we are working on the development, supporting the development of the integrated coastal zone management for the north coast of Egypt. Next, please. Next, please. Climate urban resilience, UNDP is not active in this area in Egypt, but it's extremely important to understand now that we have seen the design, the infrastructure in many places and cities and villages all around Egypt is not coping with the extreme weather events because they were not designed in the first place to absorb this amount of heavy rains that we see or the coastal flooding that we see today. And accordingly, this is part of the work that the UNDP is supporting to support the infrastructure mainly in LDCs. And how can the existing infrastructure being upgraded? But more important, the UNDP is working on the disaster risk reduction. How can I minimize the impact of this extreme weather events through the DRR and the disaster management systems, as explained in the first pillar of the UNDP. Next, please. Next. Affiliated to this last component, there is the early warning systems and the climate information. In Egypt, we are working on the development of the National Observatory System for the north coast of Egypt. This data is going to be converted into useful information to support the decision-making process in terms of protection of the north coast of Egypt, as well as planning for the land use on the north coast of Egypt. Meanwhile, this observation systems can help in the development of an early warning system coupled with the development of sending these messages to the right people in the right time so they can take the right actions during the extreme weather events in order to minimize the impact on fatalities and loss of infrastructure. Next, please. Next. And this is the last slide, and thank you for your attention.
Thanks so much, Dr. Bayoumi, for your presentation. Very informative about UNDP activities in Egypt and globally. Now we move into the last session and the last section of our session, questions and answers. We have received a number of questions. First question is about receiving the presentations by email or download. I think the organizers will be able to respond to this question. Second question is about soft structures and whether they are suitable for all types of protection, or is it sometimes necessary to use hard structures? Yes, it is sometimes necessary to use hard structures. You cannot use soft structures in all conditions. In some conditions you need to use hard structures, or you need to use hybrid structures, which are structures from hard and soft material. Second question is about if the shoreline suffers from erosion and the shoreline reaches soft structures, what would be the behavior? Yes, very good question. You need to have those dikes at relatively stable shorelines. But if the shoreline is impacted by erosion, then you need to have an integrated approach where you can build the soft structures and other structures as well to keep the stability of the shoreline so it doesn't reach the soft structures. The last questions at areas where there isn't enough space to create the proposed soft structure, is there another solution tested? In Egypt, actually, we have not faced this problem because 200 meters from the shoreline is available for the Shore Protection Authority to construct their work. So we were able to find enough space for the soft structures. But I'm sure if this is the case, there are other solutions that can be used. These are all the questions that we received in the question and answer section. If you have other questions, please either post them to the section or raise your hand so we can give you the mic to ask your question. Okay. I don't see any hands or any more questions, so I will now get back to the organizers to respond to the question about receiving the presentations by email or download. And I thank you very much for joining our session today. Thanks very much for the panelists. Thanks for the presentation. We thank Dr. Ragab Abdelazim and Engineer Medhat Hanna for joining the session with us. And thanks very much. Back to organizers. Thanks very much. Thanks a lot.